Today's topic is communicating effectively in families. And we all know that it is so important. I was just talking to a couple of sisters before, and we were talking about this generation's kids. Now, all of my kids, until end of March, will still all be teenagers. She'll turn 20, inshallah, end of March, so I'll have 3 teenagers. Being able to communicate with them, it's not easy. So first of all, you guys need to congratulate yourselves that they're still staying home if you have teenagers home. Because in the United States, and we need to be real, once those kids hit 18, the United States gives them that freedom of, I don't need to stay with you, I can go, and I do have clients like that. I have right now at least 3 clients who are over 18, who left the house at 18, but not left because of college. They left because they didn't like what was going on in their house. So if we can tackle this situation on how we can communicate with them and how we can build that relationship, I think as the Islamic community, we're going to be successful. So this is a question I asked when I did this, to my Turkish brothers and sisters. How many of you signed a consent form that you're going to be the best parent? Right? So what does that tell us? We can make mistakes, and we will make mistakes. Did you ever make a mistake? Did anyone in this room ever make a mistake? All our hands should be going up. We've all made mistakes. And one thing I want to talk about mistake part is, it is okay to apologize to our kids. And now when I mean apologize, I don't mean go to them and beg them for forgiveness, like lean down and beg. No. This is the conversation you should be having. My dear daughter, my dear son, it was a very hard time for me as well. You're my first, especially with our first kids, because as parents with your first children, you're very I need to do this the best way. I need to be the best parent. The way the best parent is going to be, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm not going to allow you to do this because you're scared, because it's the first time. So it's okay to go to them and say, hey, I made a mistake. I am so sorry for yelling at you that way. May Allah forgive us for hitting you that way. We should not be hitting our kids, period. For, calling you names or whatever it is that we did. Unfortunately, in our culture, I do not see a lot of parents doing that. Now, like I said in the beginning, I'm not saying that we do it to the point where we decrease our power, because we always need to remember that we are the parents. And there should always, and we'll talk about boundaries, there should always be that boundary. So if I ask anyone, are you friends with your kids? You shouldn't be, because we are not their friends. We can sit and talk to them about certain topics that they do feel comfortable talking with their friends, but we are not, and we should never be their friend in that aspect, because there is the dynamic. There is a different dynamic. Now, giving mixed messages. Now, what this means is, what I see a lot, unfortunately, you have a wife who's saying one thing, and you have a husband who's saying another thing. This is very, very confusing for children, because where are they going to go? They're going to go to the parent that is saying and doing what they want. So if the father's saying no and the mother's saying yes, who's the child going to go to? The mother, or vice versa. So in order for you not to give mixed messages, you have to make sure that you set aside a certain time before you speak to your kids where you're able to agree on a certain topic and say, okay, and listen, you're not going to agree on it. I was born and raised here. My whole family, prior to 1992, literally were alcoholics. My husband's side, his grandfather was Ustad Hazretleri's pilot. And they've been religious for generations. So we are very, very different. So there's going to be topics that you guys disagree on, and this is normal. You should be disagreeing. And you teach your kids how you can come to a mutual understanding of whatever that topic is. All right, so I want to kind of dwell on how Allah Ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the methods of communication that Allah and our Prophet has used and we should be using. So when we look at the Quran, we see that storytelling is so important. Why? Because it sticks to us. And what do we tell as someone who deals with children and families? We tell mothers and fathers, even when you're pregnant, you should be reading with your kids. Your kids should be listening to stories. You should be telling them stories. So some of my clients, they'll ask me and I'll say, hey, they'll come to me and they say, oh, my son is whatever age and, he likes this girl, what am I going to do? It's okay. You should be happy that he's falling in love, he has those feelings, he has those emotions. Being able to tell a story at that time and say, hey, I was young like you one day, at one time in age, and I also had feelings towards this boy, this girl, whoever's talking, mom or dad, because then it becomes relatable. And that story is what's going to stick to them. That story is what's going to help them remember, how do I deal with that emotion? Giving an example, helping to understand. Give examples. Allah Ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad gave examples. If we look at all of the methods in the Quran, when you give an example to a kid, you can't just say, do this and let it go. You have to give those examples. You have to provide the information that they can take and go with. Comparing two things to get an idea. Demonstration. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, demonstrate. We know how that works. You have to teach, like we had chores in our house all the time. My kids always did chores, but we always demonstrated it first. How do you vacuum? How do you do this? Praying. It's not about get up, pray right now, get up, pray right now. No, the child sees it. How many times do we say that they start imitating you? They don't know what they're doing, but they're imitating you because you're setting them an example. So a lot of my clients also ask me, well, it's the United States, I'm a hijabi person, I feel embarrassed, I feel this. Why? Because that's the message you're giving to your child as well. So what message is that? Maybe it's not okay for me to be walking around like this. Maybe it's not okay for me to have to pray 5 times a day. So we have to set an example and demonstrate how to do that. Simply answering questions. Tell them that I am near and I respond to the call of the caller when they call me. It's what Allah Ta'ala says to us. I am near. Allah says, come to me one step, I will come to you running, hypothetically. Come to me running, I will come to you flying. Allow your kids to be able to talk to you. I have 2 methods in my house that I use when my kids want to tell me something, and I ask them, as soon as they start talking, do you want me to just listen, or do you need my feedback? And if they tell me, I just want you to listen, I have to train myself as a therapist to just don't think solution-based. Because let me tell you, we don't know everything anyway, right? There's a lot of things that we're learning as well. So if they're asking you and they're telling you that they want you to just listen to them, then just listen. If they're asking you for advice, that's when you give advice, because that's when they're ready to listen to you, even though maybe something that they're explaining is something that you're dying to say something, but it won't be effective if you say it at that time, because they've now asked you to just listen to them. Lead by example, show empathy. I want you all to think, and seriously think about last week, for those of us who have kids in elementary, middle, and high school. Because the college ones, I don't know. I have 3 kids in college. I don't know their schedule. I'm not even trying to figure out their schedule. But if you have them in elementary school, middle school, high school, you know their schedule, kind of what time they come home at least. I want you to think about last week, when your children came home, what were you saying to them? For example, put your bag away. Did you wash your hands? Did you eat your lunch? Do you have a lot of homework? Did you do all your homework? Do you have this? Go clean your room. Do this, do that, do that. Even to yourselves, think about it. That is so tiring. They need empathy. These kids are Muslim Americans, right? They're Muslim Americans who are fighting against all of the things, even us as adults, all of the things that are surrounding them, such as, with our kids, LGBTQ, we have drugs, we have, weed, we have alcohol, when I was in middle school, there were kids that were having sexual relationships, and this is just yesterday, but like 30 years ago. Nowadays, everything is so much more free and so much more easier for them to see. So they come home so tired already because they're not aware. They're trying to preserve themselves. And I'm not only talking about during Ramadan if they're fasting and that is probably the easiest thing they do, to be honest with you. Because what I've seen from my kids, all their friends find it fascinating that they fast. And I've had even American atheist friends of my kids that have fasted with them from time to time because they find it so interesting. If we don't show them empathy and say, I know, I'm sure you had such a hard day at school today. Tell me what happened, you're not going to be able to relate with them. You're not going to be able to understand what they're going through. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Allah Ta'ala was able to engage different types of learners. Unfortunately, this day and age, our education system, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, because they see everyone as one type. The way I learn is different, the way you learn is different. I'm an auditory learner. I'm also a visual learner, you know. Don't tell me to sit down and read all these books. I'm not that type of a learner. I'll take the book, I'll read the first 15, the middle 15, the last 15, and I'll tell you about that book. But I like to travel, for example. I like to go around and see. Whereas my husband, he's a scientist, give him any book. My husband has read my kids' textbooks at school because he wanted to help them and he wanted to understand, bless you, he wanted to understand what they were learning in school. Literally, my kids were fascinated. So being able to understand what kind of a learner they are, and we're more powerful than we think as parents within the education system, but we just don't talk. You cannot expect a child who has some way, shape, or form of ADHD to sit in a class for 45 minutes in the same chair without getting a break. We can't do that. But that's what this system is pushing them to. My mother yesterday, she said, I don't understand. What is all this ADHD, ADHD, ADHD? I've never heard of it this much. Because the system is forcing you to be one type. So understand that there are different types of learners. Now, let me tell you, my husband has a very mathematical head, so he was trying to teach our kids, you know, how to do mental math or whatever. And he didn't understand because he went to college in Turkey, and I don't know if there's a lot of people here who went to college in Turkey. So you know the college entrance exam in Turkey is very stressful. When I first met my mother-in-law, she told me about my husband. She said, Denise, he didn't see the sky for 1 year when he was studying for the ÖSS. I said, oh, we're going to have a lot of work with this man. Alhamdulillah, we have a great relationship, but it was very different. It's not like that here in the United States. How many of us have kids in college? Oh, they start as liberal arts, they end up as engineering, they go into, you know, psychology, then they go into math. You can't do that in Turkey. So his head, it took him a long time to understand the educational system here. So just understand that they are different types of learners. Attentive listening. And then we have clear, concise, and direct. You need to be clear. Sometimes we feel like we have to, when we tell a story or when we give an example of something or when we say something that they're not going to understand. No, you need to go to bed, especially if they're a certain age. Obviously not in a strict way, but I would like you to go to bed at 9 because, and that's it. Clear, concise, and direct. Finish. We don't need to be giving them this whole story and this whole, you know, it's too tiring. It's too much. Now, when we think about what this modern day and age tells us, what psychology tells us, what we have here is very similar to what Allah Ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has taught us. Active listening. What's active listening? I see a lot of you shaking your head. You are actively listening. You're participating. You're mimicking, right? Actively, for kids too. Especially nowadays. I don't know how you all are. I'm sure you're amazing parents. These phones, they are killing relationships. We have our phones when we're going on the dinner table. We have our phones when we're watching a movie with them. We have our phones when we're, you know, supposedly helping them with homework or hanging out in their room. We're not actively listening if we have all of those. You have to make that connection. We'll do a social experiment later today where I'm going to have volunteers. I prefer husband and wife or best friends or whoever to sit down. I did this with our Turkish group as well for 45 seconds without blinking, without looking any other way, to focus on the eyes, because it's hard, because I feel the energy between me and you right now. I feel the need to move my eyes. Even like looking at you guys, there's certain people that I'm looking at longer, but it's difficult because we have that energy that's going back and forth, and we need that with our kids, and that's very successful through active listening. Use of I statements. Don't say you did this, you did this. Hey, when I was younger, or when I was struggling with whatever, or when I was just learning how to cook, or whatever the case is, when you use that, they're able to relate more. Be open and honest. It is okay to be vulnerable with our kids. We don't always have to be this big superhero. We don't always have to be this person that is going to save all of them. Let it go. Just be open. Be honest. Let them understand that you're human. We're human too. We can make mistakes. We can be, vulnerable. We can cry. It's okay if your kids see you cry. They should see you cry when it's necessary to cry, obviously. Stay respectful and calm. Sometimes it is so hard because they're at this age where they think they know everything, right? All of you who have kids can relate to that. I don't care how old they are, but especially if they're teenagers. They think they know everything. I had this huge argument with my daughter this morning. And I was like, you know what? Take a step back, Denise. Take a step back. She's 19. And it's very important to do this, by the way. This is a therapy method. She's 19. She's at that age where she thinks she knows everything. She might be right. Think about what she's saying. And then nope, she's not right. And if you continue, you're not getting anywhere. And that's exactly what I did today. So I failed the whole conversation with her today, although I was right. But anyway, but being able to stay respectful. And what does it mean to be respectful? I respect you. You're younger than me. And being able to say, my God, you've made so much progress. I can't believe, wow, that was so mature of you. Nonverbal communication. This is, I think, one of the biggest ones. Now, what nonverbal communication is, so, standing here, obviously, I see everybody. Now, I took a class in Masters where I was able to learn how to read body language. I can probably point out who's sleepy, I can't read your minds, obviously. Who's like, let this lady shut up, I want to go home, I don't care what's going on, because body language gives off a lot. So sometimes we think that we're being patient towards him. Astaghfirullah. Oh, that's not, and I'm not saying it verbally, but like your movements and the message that you're giving and just your whole body, the way you're doing it. Like I'm experiencing that with my mother now, and she'll just be like, I'm like, I need you, it's okay. I know what you're thinking, but just don't say it. It's okay. Think about the times what messages you've given. And you all know, you all have kids. The eye rolling and the sucking the teeth, those were the two things. May Allah forgive me, when I was part of that gang, that's why I beat up a lot of people, because they rolled their eyes at me and they sucked their teeth at me. Now, my kids do it. Obviously, I don't touch them, I don't beat them up, but that is a nonverbal way of communicating and saying, I don't like what you're saying, and I grew up with, and I love all my black people. I grew up with a lot of my friends were black, and they know how to suck their teeth, and they know how to roll their eyes, so I'm very good at it. And when my kids do it, I'm like, you can't beat me. I know how to do it better than you, but I know what you're saying. So giving off those nonverbal messages, sometimes it's not about what we say. It's how we act. It's how we represent ourselves. It's the messages that we give without talking is what they pick up on as well. Timing matters a lot. When you talk to them, I'll have a slide where I'll show you a couple of suggestions of when it's good to talk with boys, when it's good to talk with girls. All of us women here, we know that when we want something, whether it's, financially or whatever, you have to make sure that the timing is right. If he's come home and he's, agitated or whatever, this, that, and you ask, you're already lost. You're already lost. Same thing with our kids. You can't talk to them when they're making that mistake. God forbid if it's a mistake that's, that has to be corrected at the moment, that yes. But you have to pick the timing correctly. Because at that heat of the moment, they don't hear you. They're not listening to you. They're heated. They don't know what's going on at that moment. They need to calm down first. We all have a different method. I need to process stuff first, and I'm able to say to my kids, leave me alone right now. I need some time, and we'll talk about this later. But you have to make sure that you do go back and talk about that, but at the right time. Solving problems together. Now, this is for husbands and wives. You can't expect one to constantly, even my husband, he'll text me sometimes. He's like, did you tell Beza this, that? I'm like, you're her father too. We can tell her together, or you can tell her too. Don't put it on me. We have to solve the problems together, and also with our kids. Quality time and connection. I'll have somewhere where I say connection before correction. We are so eager to correct before we've made that connection with them. You must connect before you can make any correction. Most of us all have probably dealt with students ourselves, right? Whether it was through the Hizmet movement or whatever we're part of. We have all dealt with. You cannot go into an environment and start correcting them if you have no relationship with them. You need to build that relationship. Quality time, this is our biggest thing. We don't do this a lot. We have to. And it's unfortunate our fathers do it less because you're the ones who are in general outside working and the women are generally already at home and they're already spending time. But they want your attention so much. So my kids, we have 4 kids. We do each kid once a week with their father, whatever they want. They went to laser tag once, they made cookies, whatever that kid wants. And they find it so special. You don't need 3 hours, you don't need 4 hours. I was listening to, I love this psychiatrist, Dr. Aman, A-M-E-N. And he says 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day. That's all you need. I am dedicating, obviously you're with them all day, but I'm dedicating this 20 minutes. What do you want to do? Whatever it is, then you do it. Use humor wisely, not in like an obnoxious way. You have to be careful that that humor that you're using is not degrading, is not, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would make jokes. Use those jokes. Understand what you're trying to say. Use your message through humor. Respect boundaries. This is a big one. Now, everything I'm talking about it can be, translated between husband and wife and with your kids. Boundaries is a big topic that we would need, a lot of time. But just to kind of sum it up and give you a gist of what it is, boundaries isn't only physical boundaries. You have emotional boundaries. You have many ways that you disrespect someone else's boundaries. Laying out those boundaries and saying, for example, I like to go to sleep earlier. My daughter likes to go to sleep very late. So I tell her, you can stay up. I don't think it's healthy. Just don't make noise. Because then you're disrespecting my boundaries. Because we are a community in this house. And once she does, you're disrespecting my time. That is my time boundary that you have now taken away from my sleep, etc. You have to think of all of these. I don't need to give you examples of Prophet Muhammad would go to a door, knock 3 times and wait, and then go. You shouldn't be barging into your kids' rooms. We shouldn't be. It's not respectable, it's not respectful, and you're violating their boundaries. Physical boundaries. If I work somewhere, I don't have to tell somebody don't come close to me or whatever. They should know, just because of the way I am, that they are now disrespecting my boundaries if they come too close to me. So there are so many factors that influence our family dynamics. So when I talk about family dynamics, we think about there's so many unwritten rules, right? I'm sure if you all think about now your house and your dinner table, does anybody have their names written on the chair? Does it say you sit here, you sit here, you sit here? But right, in general, there's always a spot for the mother, a spot for the father. My mother lives with us, a spot for my grandmother. God forbid you sit in my mother's seat. Don't even play with her. That's her seat. But we didn't write these. These rules aren't written. So the dynamics, what comes in with our dynamics is how you see that. What I talked about when being a friend with your kid, you're the father, you're the mother, you're the parents, right? The father has certain roles. The mother has certain roles. How does this get affected? Culture. That is one big thing. I think it's a big mistake that Muslim Americans that we make. We mix culture with religion too much. I have so many friends that are from certain parts of Turkey, and they say, my father never, hugged me or kissed me when his father was around. Why? Why? It's not Islamic. Our traditions play a huge role on how we think that it should be. It might be okay for your household, which is fine, and I respect that. And I tell my kids, don't ever come to me and tell me Nesrin teyze does this in her house. You want to go live with Nesrin teyze and be her daughter? By all means. But you know what? You live here, and this is our traditions. Not that hers is wrong or mine is right or hers is wrong. Not at all. That is the way she runs her stuff. But I would never say that she's wrong and I'm right. But we cannot mix up, traditions over what is expected from us from Allah. Your family history. I told my kids, I always tell them, for me not to hit you guys was a big struggle for me. Because that was the first thing I learned. Whenever we did something, we were beat. So that was my initial thing. Okay, if someone's not listening to me, and that's exactly what I did when I was part of the gang, if you're looking at me in a nasty way, if you're not listening to me, I'm going to show you who's the boss. And that's what was done to me. So when I got married, And when we first met with my husband, that's the first thing I said to him. If we ever have kids, can you guys imagine? First meeting, you're never going to beat them. And he's looking at me like this skinny little Turkish boy, and he's like, what is she talking about? And the first thing he told me, I'm never going to allow you to wipe a window. And I'm looking at him like, what is he talking about? I don't wipe windows. He saw, and this is our trauma that comes in play, he saw a teyze wiping her window in Turkey outside of the window. You know how half of their body is out there? And unfortunately, she fell and passed away. So that's traumatic for him. So he's telling me, if we ever get married, you're not wiping a window. I'm telling him, you're never beating our kids. So our history, we all bring a lot. A lot. And it's okay to get help. I don't know why our culture, our people, maybe it's getting wider now, it's getting better. It's okay. It is okay to go and talk to somebody. This isn't ghibet, this isn't, whatever we think it is. You're not crazy. We need help. It's okay, sometimes we need help. One of my dearest friends the other day, all I did was wipe her car's rear view, camera. And she was like, oh, I didn't know I could see so clear. And I thought that day, and I said, that's all we need sometimes as friends and talking to other people. We just need someone to wipe off that dust so we could see certain things clearer. Because we all have different experiences, and we all bring different things to the table. Our emotions, roles and hierarchy within the family. You cannot be an authoritative parent and say, I'm your mother, that's why you're going to listen to me. Guess what? It doesn't work. Because once they hit 18, I promise you, Allah muhafaza, God forbid, they're going to say, you know what? I'm 18, I'm an adult, I'll see you later. I'm your father, you're going to listen? Absolutely not. They want reason, they need to understand it, and we should provide that to them. Your individual personalities, your shared experiences, these all bring and influence your family dynamics and your relationships. I love this picture. When I found this picture, oh my God, I felt like I wanted to go meet whoever made this picture. Without me even saying anything, this reminded me of how much we talk to our kids. We talk, and late Fethullah Gülen Hoca Efendi had said, our kids' ears are so fed and full, but their eyes are so empty because we don't set an example. We think that we have to go, tell them, talk to them, explain, and they're going to understand. They're not, especially if we're not setting that example. Who are we talking to? Why do we feel the need to talk so much? Seriously, when I look at myself, I think I definitely talk too much. That's something I'm working on within my own, personality. I look at alims and people who have, made so much progress in their Islamic life. From time to time, I'm not saying we should all go to a mountain and, do stuff, but even throughout the day, how many of us, and I hope most of you do, take 5 to 10 minutes, I'm not even talking about an hour or 2 hours, and just sit and just don't talk and just focus on yourself, focus on your breathing, hear your heartbeat. I'm working on 5 minutes a day. It is hard because we have this, I call it in Turkish, hadi syndrome. Let's go. Where are we going? Why do we want to go somewhere so much? Let's go, let's do this. And I'm a New Yorker, it is so fast-paced there. Let's go. Where are we going? What are we trying to talk? Why are we talking so much? Who's listening? Are we really talking like we talked about before? Timing matters. You think they're really listening to you every time you talk to them? Sorry to break it to you, but they're not. And don't get offended. But timing is very important. Why do we have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Allah Ta'ala says you need 2 ears because you need to listen more. 1 mouth because we need to talk less. Like we say, hal insana, to be able to be a person of example. And I promise you that is much more effective than us trying to teach them by words. And like I said before, connection before correction. It is extremely essential. Now this is just, we all know it, we all can find it. You need to know your own love language. There's a whole bunch here, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, receiving gifts, physical touch, and it gives examples of what they are. You have to know your spouses, because sometimes, you know, in Turkish we say, elimden geldiğini yaptım. Elimden geleni yapıyorum. I'm doing everything I can in my power. I do not need that from your hand, though. I need something else. Maybe I'm someone who likes to spend quality time, 10 minutes a day for you to come and sit me. Maybe I'm somebody who likes, you know, receiving gifts, and I'm not talking about expensive gifts. I did a seminar once with our older Turkish men, and I said a couple of things. So he called me later. He goes, "My dear daughter, now you're telling me after 55 years of being married to my wife, I have to bring her flowers?" I said, "If she likes flowers, yes." So he started giving her flowers every week. Yes, and they had like their ikinci bahar, as we call it. I don't know what it's called in Turkish, you know, whatever, their second honeymoon or something, you know. Whatever your love language is, that's going to be what's going to be effective. If you don't know yourselves, your husband's, and your kids' love language, how are you supposed to express anything to them if you don't know what affects them and what's good for them? So that's, you know, homework for you guys if you haven't. I don't know what that is. Okay, I don't know if I missed a slide, but I don't remember. It's fine. So I kind of put this up here. Obviously, this isn't a rule written in stone. My experience, I have 1 son and 3 girls, and I have 9 nieces and nephews. So this is my experience, and I've also found this with, you know, scientific research. Boys, first of all, to get their attention, God help us all, because they're very, you know, everywhere. In general, in the car. If they're playing any kind of sport and you're on your way to a soccer game, basketball game, whatever game it is, in the car. When they're eating, my son, he's skinny and fit, but he loves to eat. If you want to talk to him, you need to talk to him about during dinner time, when you're preparing food, or when he's eating. When they're alone. And this goes for both. Because no one really, even if it's their siblings, they don't really want to be that vulnerable or look that weak in front of their siblings. So they want that alone where you can kind of talk to them then. Boys, again, when you're doing sports, you know, throwing a ball, throwing a football, you know, whatever it is, whatever, you know, in general, Turkish people play soccer, when you're kicking a ball around, whatever. Especially for boys, you know, my in-laws have been living with us since 2016 now. I don't know if any of you know my father-in-law, but he is, I love him to death. Very, very, very nice guy, nice religious guy, very nice guy. So we're having dinner, you know, in our house in Cincinnati, and he goes, and I say to my son, "So, Orhan, any girl ask you out this week?" And they're like, "What? Why are you talking about this?" And I said, "What's wrong with this topic? I'm not telling you to, you know, have a date or go out. We have to normalize these conversations. We have to, because they're normal feelings and they're normal things. So we have to normalize these conversations and forget about, not forget, but leave that cultural, oh my God, how do I talk about this? This is edep. No, we can't." Let me tell you something, because if you don't talk about it, someone out there, and that's not going to be the person you like, and they're not going to be telling them what you want them to hear, they're definitely going to be talking about it. Another boy thing, girls too. I've been noticing a lot of girls telling me they're playing video games. It wasn't like that a couple of years ago. Playing video games. If they play, you know, whatever, this is another topic as well. Social media, video games, and all that is another topic. But when they're playing video games, sit and play with them. And then start talking about whatever you need to talk about. Now, girls, we're more emotional, so we have better conversations at night. You know, at night, especially, you know, my girls, they're all like that. When they're kind of a little more drowsy or whatever, it's good to have conversations with them. When they ask a question, because girls, although they don't want to seem like they are so strong with their opinions, you have to wait for them sometimes to ask a question. You can't go to them directly if you want to send a direct message. Let's see if she's going to ask me. You can guide them to kind of get them to ask that question. And when they want to talk. You know, us females, we're moody. We have emotions up and down throughout the day. How many times? Allah Ta'ala created women. Allah Ta'ala created men. Men are much more logical than us. We can argue. I'm also very, you know, feminist in kind of a way. But it's a great balance. Because we need that logic. They need the emotional part of us. So we have to make sure that we kind of find that connection. So there's so many things, and I'm sure that there's a lot of things that a lot of you do, and that's why later when we're eating, I put up some questions later. I want you guys to talk about these, but family meetings at least once a week. You have to. Like these two beautiful young ladies here. When something's going to be decided in the house, I'm sure they would want to have that conversation and say, hey, Anne, Baba, Mom, Dad, we live here too. Hello? Can we talk about this? Just talk about it. Not how was your day, but how are you feeling lately? Whatever you have, whatever topic you have, play games. Whatever topic you have in that meeting, whatever you have to do. It's not like a work meeting, but giving the importance of, I want to get together with you and I want to talk about things that are important to our family. Pray together for us Muslim Americans. Very, very important. Whether this is the way you do namaz or you do verbally prayer. We must, because it's extremely important and it allows you to connect. And let me tell you something. I memorized at least 4 different surahs from praying as a family. And it's funny because we would all say to my husband, poor man, and he would have to know way more than us, obviously, okay, read this surah today. Okay, read this surah in this rakat, read this surah in this rakat, so we can practice our memorization. It helps. Spending time, quality time with each child, we already talked about. Family meal times, this is a big thing. Unfortunately, we all have hadi syndrome. Let's go. Everyone's schedule is so different. We have to maximize the amount of time that we eat together. Because so much conversation happens when we're eating. Whether it's hard to have breakfast, even if it's like 2-3 times a week. We try definitely during the weekend to have breakfast and dinner together. Because everyone's schedule is, especially when they get older. But if you have the ones who have younger kids, and we always did that, we always had dinner together. Always. Volunteering together. We would go to a church or somewhere, wherever they had any volunteering event. We would go together. We would do things together. You would show your kids, again, talking about setting by example, what it means to help others. Instead of talking about it and saying, here's $50, I'm sending it to Africa for them to have cataract surgery. Do that too, but show them that volunteering together, how important it is. When they're doing homework, be next to them. These kids get a lot of homework, and I hate it. I think it's too much, but they get it. If they're struggling, just sit next to them. Just be there. Just try and understand. I'm telling you, my husband read textbooks. I'm not telling you all to go read, because don't tell me, because I'm not reading it either. But be next to them and try and understand. Oh, is this what you're learning? And then when they start explaining it to you, they're actually even learning better. Do sports together, whatever sport that is. Dance together. There'll be times where we'll blast the music and we'll just let loose. This is a therapy method. We let them scream, we dance, we run around the house, we play hide and seek. My kids are older, but we still do it. It's very important. Play games, any kind of games. The best game that we play right now is Telestrations. Oh my God, it's so fun. I can't draw for the life of me. But everyone draws a picture, there's a thing, and then it goes to the next person, and you have to guess, and then you have to draw it. It's like $5, $6. It's not expensive. I swear, it's a great family game. Telestrations if you guys want it. Surprise them. And it doesn't have to be big things. Sporadically surprise them with something. I don't know, you guys have to know their love language and know what they like. That's what you're going to have to surprise them with. There definitely should be a family calendar. There has to be. You don't have to write everything of yours if you're working in every single meeting or anything. But like today's event, they knew I was coming here because I had it on the family calendar. Okay, Anna's not going to be here tonight, so we know not to worry about dinner because my mother lives with me and she's an amazing cook, but they know that I'm not going to be there, so they can't do anything with me tonight. And that gives them that sense of, oh, I have a life too. I do stuff too. Let me put that in the calendar. And they'll put like their tests, or if they're hanging out with a friend, whatever it is. For all of our parents here who have kids that are up to college, you must be involved in their schools. You have to. This isn't even an if, and, and but question. When they see you going to the school, you have to build that relationship with the teacher, with the principal, with the counselor. My kids still talk to their elementary school teacher, their 4th grade teacher. My daughter's in 2nd year of college. We still call her Italian teacher. And she still remembers so much about my daughter. You have to be involved. What's going on there? What are the other kids doing? What are they learning? What's the atmosphere of the school? You know, volunteer in the library, volunteer in the classroom, especially if you have kids in elementary school. They always have little stuff going. Do they still have like Valentine's Day parties and, you know, stuff like that? Just go. I know most of us work, but there's times we can take off a day or two. An hour or two. Book reading, we used to do that. Do they still do that in Islam, where you can go and read a book in your child's class? Go read a book. Because when your kid sees you there, first of all, they feel so cool. That's my mother. That's my father. And then you have that connection with the teacher as well. And we talked about active listening. To be able to listen actively, repeat what they say to you in a way. So if they've explained something to you, so this is what I'm understanding. You're telling me that that girl took your pencil and she hurt your feelings because whatever. Am I correct? Yes. So you're now validating their emotion, understanding what's going on, and you're showing that you were listening to them and you can regurgitate, if it's appropriate to say that, their story that they have. And let's just learn to be quiet. Just let them talk as much as in our head we're like, I cannot believe she's saying that. I can't believe that's going on. All right, so now I just want to give like a minute to two kind of a break. This is our 45-second thing. And I picked this one because, let me tell you, we're human. And there's times, alhamdulillah, that Allah will not question us for the things that go through our head. Because there's times, alhamdulillah, I've been living with my in-laws. We have a great relationship. But let me tell you, it's hard sometimes. And sometimes I have thoughts of, whatever. But we're not responsible for it. So what's going to happen in this experiment is, I want, it doesn't matter, 3, 4, whatever groups, 45 seconds of just focusing. And when we did it with our Turkish, with the Turkish group, I had people that cried. I had people that started hysterical crying. I had someone remember a very close friend of theirs looking through someone else's eye, because it is hard to make that connection. But to be able to make that connection and allow your energy and your emotions to flow amongst each other, that's why they say, if you're a female and a male, and obviously if you don't have that kind of marriage thing, you should not be, because it's emotions, like it flows, it just goes. So I don't know who would like to volunteer, and we're not going to watch you and, and say, oh my God, look, what are they feeling? If everyone, if you guys are okay, we can do one round of it, okay? If you can pick a partner, we have 5 chairs there, so it would be, 10 people, and we're just going to do that for 45 seconds. No talking. You cannot if you need to blink, blink, but 45 seconds you should be able to keep your eyes open that long. You just can't look away. And the trick to this is that you have to let loose. You have to let loose, meaning I am now focusing and I am allowing myself to look into your eyes. I had one of my clients do this. She's 16 and her mother's whatever. And she doesn't have a good relationship with her mother. Unfortunately, there was a lot of problems with communication and stuff. And she said, Deniz Abla, we did it the first day. I couldn't even look in her eyes. I just wanted to pull her hair. I said, that's okay. Had a couple of more therapy sessions after that one. She said, Deniz Abla, I was only able to do it for 3 seconds. It's okay, Yavrum. Now they do it every day for a minute. Wow. Alhamdulillah. The outcome is for you to understand how your feelings, because the last session with the woman I had with the Turkish group, I had one of the sisters said, right now, those eyes, just the feeling that her energy is giving me, took me way back to the person who introduced me to Islam. That person isn't that person, but it's that emotion. So they have done this scientifically, and people who weren't able to talk, people just like my client and her mother, it takes time. We're not expecting magic here. I don't expect, if there's a husband and wife who's going through some turmoil here and, or, whatever, to fall back in love immediately. But inshallah, we all have a good relationship, but, it helps, it works. And I would suggest that you guys do this from time to time. So after I did that last time, I went home to my husband. I said, when was the last time we actually sat and looked at each other's eyes for 45 seconds? So we try and do it now. So if I can have my volunteers, pick your partner. You have your husband, okay.